Here we are, Atlanta. Here we are, world. We're back right here on Call to Reason with Loveless and Beth. And guess what, y'all? As promised, we've got a real inside scoop on the emerging DeKalb County scandal from someone who is completely qualified to know what it's like to deal with running the largest county in the state of Georgia while being harassed by investigation. And this is someone, you can love him, you can hate him, you can say whatever, but our former CEO, Vernon Jones, has survived numerous investigations and still walks around a free man, never having been indicted for anything.
And almost became sheriff.
And we know for a fact that the investigation that ultimately snared Burl Ellis was designed to get Vernon Jones. And folks, if you don't believe that, then you're just not in touch with reality, because that is what really happened. Welcome to Call to Reason, CEO Vernon Jones.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for letting me be on your show. And hey, I'm a new listener, and you guys got some exciting topics going on, and I'm glad I can be in the company of you, Mr. Loveless, and certainly Beth Cope, which I've known for a long time too. So it's an honor to you all to have me on your station.
Well, we're grateful to have you, Vernon. We're just going to get right into it. What do you make about all this mess in DeKalb County?
Well, first of all, we have to always keep in mind maintaining the highest account of public trust is important. Always have been, always will be, because you're dealing with taxpayers' dollars. And so it's important that everyone to feel as though their dollars are being appropriately spent and managed. And at the same time, when people elect you, they elect you to make the tough decisions as you govern their government. And at the same time, in the midst of all that, obviously you're going to have disagreements, you're going to have distractions, you're going to have the media weighing in. I always say that government is the number one choice for the media to feed at, because, again, you're dealing with the public trust. And so me, like others, have been watching and observing what has been going on. Obviously, there's the image of DeKalb County right now is not one that I would want, not one that I fought to keep from happening, is not one that people would like to have to feel good about their county. But there are a lot of factors going on. A lot of it is political, we call it politrick. A lot of it are legitimate concerns and issues. A lot of it is sensationalism. A lot of it is media-driven. So there are a lot of factors going on here, but at the end of the day, you are not supposed to violate your oath of office. And if you do, you will be dealt with swiftly in the justice system.
There's a really interesting piece of this story that I think is just, if it weren't, with people involved that I know, it would be funny. But what's interesting is that Lee May, the CEO, hired the very investigators who are biting him in the butt. He hired Mike Bowers, and now says that he has to apologize to the taxpayers for erring in the selection of Mike Bowers, according to the AJC article. What are your thoughts about hiring an investigator and having that investigator turn around and lay some of the blame at your own feet? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I can't speak and think for Lee May, as having been the chief executive and spent 8 years there. I would say this: there were, as I read from the newspaper and observed from TV, I believe that the appropriate authority that was objective, did not have a political vendetta to investigate, in my opinion, was already there doing its job and had already proven that it had started to clean up the inappropriate actions by the elected body there and staff, and that was the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Commissioner Elaine Boyer and her husband and this associate that she had, all of them have already been indicted. Two of them have already been sentenced. One is already serving her jail sentence, meaning Elaine Boyer. So that body, in my opinion, has the legal authority, the investigatory powers, and it's their job description to come in and address issues like that. The district attorney, in my opinion, investigating a governing body that approves his budget, there can always be conflicts of interest there. There can always be political gains going on there. And I can say that for a fact, having been the chief executive officer that had to deal with district attorneys who had political vendettas, and they abused their office, in my mind, my opinion. But to bring in Mike Bowers, former state attorney general, obviously, in that case, that is a he has a political motive, one could say, and one could say he has a financial motive. He's not going to come in and say, hey, everything is going fine. He's not going to come in today and he's billing upwards, when you look at him and his staff and et cetera, upwards $2,000 or $3,000 an hour. Well, he has a financial motivation, not the Federal Bureau of Investigation. They don't have a financial motive. They don't have a political motive. They're probably the most objective body you can have there. Now, with that being said, it appears as though when Lee gave that so-called unfettered access to government, well, and then you spell out what you say it should be. Well, you hope that your agreement is met, but to me I would not have done that. To me, that was another party in the way, and you can see the interaction between Mike Bowers and the media.
So you think that if the CEO had brought in GBI, that would have shown transparency and would have been less, at least financially motivated. But do you think that it was politically motivated too? Because it seems like, in my view, just keeping up with Mike Bowers' career in the last year, particularly how he stood up and represented the LGBT community, and also, some of the corporations. It was specifically the LGBT community, but certainly some of the corporations were supporting his work because they did not support the legislation, the Religious Freedom Bill. And so it seems to me, like in the last year, that Bowers seems to be a little bit less driven politically. Do you not agree with that assessment? Am I being a little bit naive in Mike Bowers' later years?
Mike Bowers is a private citizen. He has to earn a living. So when you having to defend someone, sometimes lawyers defend people when they know they're guilty. But everybody has access to a lawyer. But you still have,
We're here.
There's a financial aspect of him when he's defending individuals and individuals with causes. I'll go back to what you said earlier, I thought was a great point. The GBI is not an elected body. The GBI is well qualified to come in and do that type of investigation. But again, I would have, as a district attorney, I would have said to avoid any impropriety and getting drugged in like he's being drugged in now, I would have asked the GBI to come in and investigate this. Listen, I don't want this to be political. This body approves my budget, and I don't want anybody to say there was any political witch hunts here. Now, they could have asked the GBI to come in, but I'll go back to what I said. There was already a body there, higher than the GBI, a federal agency there involved. And it's now all these layers. There's this ethics committee. The ethics committee the other night, I understand, almost got shut down because they have exceeded or trying to exceed their authority. Then the General Assembly created this other body where they're going to be appointing members to oversee what goes on in the day-to-day operation of county government. And so you got all these layers because it got so political and everybody trying to rush and do something to appear, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and it's created more layers of bureaucracy, just like bringing Mike Bowers in. That's created more. Then you got the media doing their own investigation, like their investigative body. So this thing has got so convoluted until you're going to see innocent people's reputation get damaged, and then you're going to see those, I believe, who may have behaved inappropriately. I believe you're going to see, at the end of the day, justice is going to come to them as well. But let the bodies, like the federal agency who's already there, let them do their job.
So Vernon, I have a couple questions. First of all, how do you think that Lee May made a good move when he flatly dismissed the entire report and called it laughable? Because it seems to me like the reaction from the community is that this is hardly laughable. This is absolutely no laughing matter. What do you make of his response and how he's handling himself right now?
As tight as the taxpayers' budgets, their pockets are. In other words, their own budget. They're trying to maintain their own budgets, and they don't want to pay more and more in taxes, and they want to see their dollars being appropriated in a way that's not wasteful spending. So when you look at paying almost $1 million if you look at the report, I hadn't seen anything in the report that hasn't already appeared in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution or in the other news outlets. And so one could say that money could have been better spent or not spent at all because, again, you have the other authority in there right now, federal agency, that we're not paying for as taxpayers indirectly. Directly, but we are indirectly because we pay federal taxes. But you already have a body there doing their job, and that almost $1 million, one could argue, as my neighbor said yesterday, that money could have been spent on building some sidewalks in their neighborhoods. So it depends on who looks at it. So I guess maybe Lee didn't get what he thought he should be getting. If you look at it, 39-page report, about $850,000, that's about $22,000 a page.
Right. Well, listen.
If you look at it from that, I'm not saying that it's laughable now, but let's look at, have you seen anything in that report that hasn't already been reported by the media?
No, I haven't. And the other thing is that, the fact that he hired Mike Bowers instead of calling in the FBI or the GBI was curious to me because those folks take testimony and they interview people under oath. And of course, it's illegal to lie or obstruct an investigation when the GBI or the FBI is involved. And one of the things that former Attorney General Bowers is alleging is obstruction by Lee May, particularly with Robert James records and access to Morris Williams and other stuff. What do you make of that? And although Lee May promised complete transparency and cooperation, apparently he hasn't delivered it.
You can look at that two ways. As I understand it from what I read, when he first used this executive order, he did reference that after 120 days he would have the discretion whether to continue or not. So if he had that discretion and that 120 days had expired, one could say, well, Mike Bowers is upset because he can continue to make more money. So you can look at it different ways. So and obstruction, you're not obstructing justice if there's no investigative body there who's doing the investigation and has the legal authority to do an investigation. That's why I said this wasn't an investigation. This was a management review study. See, that's how the lines got blurred. The federal agency that's there now, they're a law enforcement agency that has the investigatory powers to seek information. If anybody withholding information in that regard, obviously that's obstruction of justice. I will say, on the other hand, I saw the district attorney when he referenced that he would not provide Mike Bowers with those records because the investigation was over. Well, let's look at that for a second.
Well,
it had nothing to do whether the investigation was over or not. Those records on how he spends taxpayers' dollars in that district attorney's office, you better than anybody else can ask for those records, and he has to comply and give you those records. So I was a little confused how he can say he didn't have to give Mike these records, and he submitted an open records request because the so-called investigation was over.
Well, the open records request doesn't have a deadline.
Contact the DA's office and look, I want to know, give me every expenditure and you and your staff just had with the P card, and what those expenditures were on. Because if you look at the report yesterday, there was one expenditure for $950 for the name was just there for Buddy, Uncle Bob. What was $950? Who was Uncle Bob, and what was $950 spent on?
Well, to your point, when someone files an open records request, there's not a certain condition that has to take place in order for that request to be met. It doesn't matter if the investigation has started, not begun, or if there's not an investigation at all. If somebody submits an open record that's available to the public, then they should get it. That's sort of the bottom line.
And to me, that's what kind of threw me off, even with the media. I didn't see the media say, wait a minute. We're going to ask for this same information under the Open Records Act too, and see if he were to deny them. That was something I saw. The media just seemed like it just went completely over their heads. So Mike was, in that regard, Mike did have the right to ask for that information, regardless, I should say, to an open record, or to an investigation or a management review, if you will.
So, Vernon.
That one really, and not only him, but the sheriff's office, they only supply 1 month. Well, wait a minute, why would you only supply 1 month? And it's also clear that the sheriff's department didn't want to comply. Now, that's what concerns me. When you have two law enforcement agencies who do not want to comply with the basic open records request that any citizen can give, and you want to talk about transparency, to me, that's not transparency, that's hypocrisy.
I think that a transparent government is exactly what DeKalb County needs. Will you stay with us over the break? Because I want to get into nonprofit slush funds when we get back. Can you stick around with us?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, great.
All right. Folks, you are listening to Call to Reason, and we've got Vernon Jones in a Call to Reason exclusive. Yes, we scooped the former CEO because no one else had sense enough to get this wisdom from really someone who's more qualified than anybody else walking around right now to know what really is going on inside this whole scandal and what it's like to deal with it. We're going to see you on the other side of the break. We'll be back. We've got Vernon Jones. You're on Call to Reason on 87.9 FM, The Globe. Former DeKalb County CEO Vernon Jones is on with us talking about this emerging scandal surrounding Mike Bauer's, as he calls it, management review study. Because it's certainly not a real investigation. And Beth wants to jump back in, Vernon, and talk about some other interesting stuff that could be relevant here. Beth, what do you want to jump into?
So one of the things that's mentioned in the WSB article, and it's just one sentence that sort of jumped out at me, and it's Bowers being quoted saying, "The giving of money to charities becomes sort of a campaign slush fund for folks. That's what it becomes." And I'm not sure how illegal this is, because I personally know of one statewide elected official that has his hands in all kinds of not so-called nonprofit slush funds where he's getting his buddies to contribute to them, and his mom, the president of the board, and all of his cronies as board members, and of course perhaps and also his paramour, for that matter, as some sort of consultant and executive director, ousting the woman who actually started it along with the family and kind of did a hostile takeover of a nonprofit organization. If it comes to light that these nonprofit slush funds that elected officials create, what is going to be the ramification of that with all elected officials? Because if Lee May or some elected official in DeKalb city government or DeKalb County government gets thrown under the bus for something like that, I hope that they're going to take a look into a lot of elected officials who are doing this and throw them under the bus too.
Well, here's the thing about that, Beth, and I was looking at that. As a matter of fact, probably one of the biggest abusers of that was Jeff Rader. There's a process. DeKalb County does have a budget for nonprofit organizations to apply for grants. But that is a process where any and everybody, as long as they meet the criteria, they can apply for those grants. Now, the difference is there's a formal process there, and it is voted on by all the Board of Commissioners. Staff makes recommendations, then the Board of Commissioners vote on it. Here's a case, though, where you have Raiden and others who are literally using at their discretion these funds to divvy out to groups of their choice. I was looking at Kathy Gannon's. Hers was just, there was a borderline as to who got her grants in terms of within her district. There's an imaginary line, and if you plot out where most of her grants went, it didn't go throughout her district. It just went in certain parts of her district. So that shows, again, at her discretion. And that's part of the problem that's creating more and more feelings that there's this private slush fund, they're giving it out to who they want to give out to, and that is, in my opinion, improper. As it relates to then illegal, the government cannot, there are certain laws that govern the county in terms of, and the state government in terms of what we can get out, like they call it the gratuity law. Some things we cannot just do. That's why when you're doing these personal slush funds, as you call them, and the county attorney is not involved to give at least the county attorney's opinion in terms of does this or does it not meet the requirement, or using that same to submit to the Attorney General's office and ask for an opinion. And so, but here's the problem. If you go back and track during my administration, towards the end of my administration, the commissioners started asking for more money in their budget. They wanted more, and they used staff. We need more staff to handle our constituent calls. And you can start to see it was really bloated after I left office, where they started increasing their staff. But what they did not do is hire those additional people that say they were going to hire. So you saw that money being left over in that, like you call that slush fund. So they just started giving that money out, when in fact it was under the auspices of we need more staff to handle our constituent calls. So the money that you should be giving staff to handle constituent calls, you're giving these monies out to various groups. Well, that was not the intent. And it's almost as if you track when the commissioners were saying that the CEO has too much power, and the commissioners start inheriting and getting the legislature to give them more power, that's when you really start to see the abuse start to come from the Board of Commissioners.
To put a finer light on that, when those monies get dispersed through the community to the organizations, is there some sort of RFP, or is there some sort of grant making process, or is that really just 100% up for the discretion of the elected official?
Those grants used to come to, they normally would come through the Human Services side of the house, where you have Community and Human Services. That agency would, and matter of fact, some could say there's some abuses on that, because some of the same organizations get it over and over. And if you try to take it from them, believe it or not, those that are favored by the press would come and get on administration. Why are you taking this money from this group? And see, that's another issue. That whole process needs to be revamped, and you shouldn't get it no more than once every 5 years. But there is a process, and
at least report the results of, the results you were able to yield, because, being in the nonprofit world myself, I know that anytime I've ever filled out an application for a grant, there was some sort of accountability measure at the end where, we had to show, and not all programs work, but you at least have to show your work and show, what you did and what your work yielded, and if you accomplish the goals of the grant.
But see, actually on the front end, in most cases, there's a criteria: 3 years of operating experience, 3 years of operating statements, your profit and loss statement, what the money be spent on. Yeah, you had that in place. But my point, though, is even though you've got organizations that can provide you that, but it never get a chance to go around to other organizations as well. In other words, you got some organizations been getting grants, and they're there, and they're not stopping at all. They've been getting maybe 20, 25 years. And it's hard to cut them off because they have your connections with the media, and then they go and say you're trying to take money from this group, when in fact there should be what I call a cooling off period, that if you receive a grant this year, then to allow some other groups out there, the important groups that are doing, at the end of the day, they can show you how they did the grants. Not that it's being abused, not from that standpoint, they're not doing the work, but from the standpoint of you allowing other groups to come in and be able to apply as well. Because some just always get it every year. And I don't think that's fair to other groups out there who can use those funds, who are doing a good job as well of providing our community needs. And so I think the whole thing needs to be revamped. But to go back, though, if the commissioners wanted to delve out these grants, that money should have been moved over, and there should have been a criteria that Joe Public, any organization out there who's interested, who met the criteria, again, 3 years operating experience with operating statements and a proven track record where these funds would go and what you've been doing. I think that levels the playing field for everybody to be able to compete. But what these commissioners done, two things: they've done it in a whole, in a vacuum, on their own, and they pick their favorite groups they want to give it to. As a matter of fact, you saw several of those nonprofit groups that were getting money from different commissioners, same group.
We actually have noticed that. Vernon, what now we know that when you were CEO, one of the things that you refused to do was take a P card. And as it turns out, these P cards are at the bottom of a lot of these troubles. What made you choose that you and your senior staff would not touch those P cards?
Well, let me say this. I can't say I'm honestly aware of everybody who had a P card, but let me tell you the intent of the P card. The intent of the P card was to reduce reduce bureaucracy, make it more efficient, more effective. If a department needed to make a purchase on something that was related to county business, not personal, county business, whether you're buying a computer or whether whatever you're doing is related to county business, that P card could only be spent on that purpose and no other purpose. And you had to sign a statement saying that this is not for personal use. This is not to get your car repaired. This is not to go out and buy something from Target. But if it's for a purpose for this office, for the county government and as part of your day-to-day operation to do business with the public, then it was approved. Now, there was a mechanism in place, an audit that shows what your expenditures are. And that would, when I heard that Lee May say that he couldn't stop the commissioners from using their P card, I totally disagree. I almost jumped out of my seat because the P cards are issued from the administration. So when one of those audit reports had come out and said that Commissioner Elaine Boyer was using her card excessively on personal charges, at that moment, I would have, and I wouldn't have to have done it. My county executive would have said, look, this can't happen no more. I know certainly if I would have known, if I had known about it once the audit had come out, I would have pulled that card. If that commissioner would have had an issue with that, I would let that commissioner answer for that at the Board of Commissioners meeting right there at the microphone so the entire public can see why she needs her P card to continue to buy airline trips for her and her family. So, so I never, to my recollection, I can't ever remember having a P card. If there was something that needed to be done, I had to travel. Obviously, I had to travel at times with county business, but in most cases, it was merely for my airfare and for my hotel. I think my secretary used to beat me up because most of my food, I purchased it on my own. And then there were times, because the media was so hard on everything I was doing, many times I didn't travel because I just didn't want to deal with their foolishness. They picked who could travel. They would. I can tell you this: they never said anything about Elaine Boyer traveling or her expenses, but they were quick to make an issue if I did anything.
Now, let me ask you this: speaking now that we were talking about some of the controversies that you've had to deal with, what do you say to the people now that they threw just about everything they could except the kitchen sink at you. And what was that like to have to be alleged to be so bad and have all these investigations and all these inquiries about your activities? What was that like while trying to run the county at the same time?
First and foremost, it was a higher calling and an honorable job, and I still hold it very near and dear and sacred to my heart that people elected me twice to handle their local government affairs. And each and every day, I stress. Matter of fact, I came out. One of the first initiatives I did was to improve our ethics laws. I had two lawyers, Jonathan Shields and forget the other gentleman's name. I had two of them work. They gave me an ethics package I had passed, which talked about if anybody has any outside income, senior staff, and other things. And so, from day one, I wanted to govern with the highest ethical standards. However, and I put a however there, because of my uniqueness of being elected, and it changed the paradigm of the every time there was a new administration, it was almost the previous administration had a hand in it. And so they just kind of kept that going. I guess I was an outsider, and being an outsider in many regards, and being all honest, I think there were, in cases where my election, there was unreasonable expectations among many African Americans, and there was equally unreasonable fears among many whites. And so, just that alone put me in a whole new different spotlight. And then I wasn't like my predecessors. But if you look at Manuel Malou was more colorful than anybody that I know. But he was always complimented. Oh, he drives the government with an iron fist. He's in charge, and he'll kick him in the ass. He'll kick him, in the butt. But when I came in and demanded that same level of excellence, and had a firm hand on the handle on how we're going to run this government and do it right, well, then people question, he's this and he's that, and, he wants to be called this, and all that was just foolishness. But we would treat it two different ways, although one was more brash, but I was treated as if I were the one that was brash. So that put me on a different light and created a lot of microscopes. And my predecessors had security. Nobody had a problem with it. When I had it, I got investigated for it.
Was your security detail, did it cost more than your predecessor? Was that one of the reasons why the eyebrows were raised?
See, that's the whole thing. It didn't cost more at all. Matter of fact, the same reporter who said it cost more said that I rode in a bulletproof vehicle. That was false. I went through a grand jury on that exact same issue, and the judge ruled. Not an opinion. The judge ruled that the grand jury and the district attorney had exceeded their authority. But that wasn't printed in the news media. You can check the records now. That it was personal. It was a witch hunt. But the thing about grand juries, once that report comes out, then it's like toothpaste. You can't put it back in. And many DAs who do the political targeting, they know that. And so you get tainted with the news media. And again, I'll repeat this. I went through a grand jury about my security details, but Leanna didn't go through it, neither did Manuel Malou. I didn't pick my security details. The police chief picked the security details. But I can tell you this. Remember, I got elected when the sheriff was killed. The same time the sheriff was killed was during the time that I got elected.
I remember that well.
When Derwin Brown was gunned down in his own driveway.
I remember that well, Vernon. I actually came to your...
I went through a grand jury. I went through 3 grand jury investigations about my security detail. And that's another thing about grand jury investigation. And this is what's important that's happening. Many district attorneys use a civil grand jury to really politically target you and damage you. Because when you're in that civil grand jury, it's an inquiry. It's merely an inquiry. And they feed the grand jurors what they want to feed the grand jurors. And when the report comes out, what happens? well, he's been investigated for corruption, this and that. So you can be completely innocent. There's absolute a shred of evidence that you already tainted, and your name is already messed up in the newspaper, and you go and Google yourself, look what they pull up for Google, you on the investigation. Where you go through an investigation, you're cleared from it, but they don't come and say you're cleared. So a lot of DAs,
as big of a deal out of being cleared with an investigation as they do if you're found guilty of something, that's for sure.
Here's what the difference between a civil grand jury and a criminal grand jury. A civil grand jury has no indictment powers. So what you see some DAs do, they'll do a civil grand jury to try to find anything they can out there on you. All right, and that's the net. This puts them out, and people don't know at a civil grand jury, they don't have the right to tell you, look, you don't have to answer questions when you come in. Look, you can have a lawyer sit right outside. Every question they ask you can write it down and walk outside of that room. A lot of people get caught in civil grand juries not knowing their rights. And I can just tell you, talk about my experience, I just went through it in the grand jury they had the last time, and I exercised my constitutional right. My lawyer advised me not to answer any questions that were irrelevant. All of them were irrelevant. But then the grand jury report, because I exercised my constitutional right, I need to be further investigated because I didn't offer any meaningful testimony. So every time the news media talk about the grand jury report and what the grand jury recommended, these are Joe Blow citizens. They only know what the DA is telling them. But the DA writes the report, not the grand jury members. They don't write the report, but they hide behind, oh, this is the grand jury report. No, that's not true. And so that's how a lot of innocent people's reputations are messed up too. And so what happens? It damages you politically a lot of times from speaking of officers. Oh, well, he's been on an investigation. And so that's why the civil grand jury process should be done away with, because it's supposed to be done as an inquiry. Look, let's talk about how grand jury members want to know how you operate the accounting department. It's not to be used as a political switch. And if there's a criminal issue, then you should convene a criminal grand jury. If you look at the Burrow Ellis case, that's a case that really patterned itself after mine. If you remember, when the grand jury dealt with me on my security detail, and we told the judge we do not want to go to grand jury because it's a political witch hunt. The judge ruled that I had to go, but before the report would be released, she would review the report. Well, in fact, that's exactly what happened when they finished the grand jury report, and we saw it was just a bunch of witch hunt and a bunch of salacious stuff that was completely to assassinate your political character. Then the judge agreed, and the judge told me, my lawyers, and J. Tom Morgan, at that time the DA, to go back and see if we can agree with what was in the grand jury report. And we couldn't agree. We said, you got to throw it all out. Well, we come back to the judge, we can't agree. The Judge Gail Flake, she took the grand jury report, but just before she got it to go back through it, that grand jury report somehow gets released to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution put all that stuff in the newspaper and all the foolishness from the grand jury report. However, when the judge came back and looked at it, she redacted all the foolishness and then ruled that the grand jury exceeded its authority.
Wow.
So, Vernon, we're going to take one more break.
That's why Burrow Ellis, his legal team, was fighting that grand jury report being released, because they wanted a chance to challenge that grand jury report, and many of us should have had a chance to challenge that grand jury report.
Yeah, right.
Scott, to his judicial wisdom, he agreed. The district attorney, he was the one who appealed it, and before it can be appealed, the chief judge, Judge Adams, released the grand jury report, including the judge that presided over the grand jury. That judge actually voted on it too, which she should have been recused herself. And so when you look at this, and that report was released, a lot of innocent people, including myself, name was damaged in that grand jury report. We didn't get a chance to go through it and challenge the information that was in it. And so that's what happened. And you think about Burrow Ellis. Burrow Ellis was charged with perjury based on what he said in the civil grand jury, not the criminal grand jury.
Okay, Vernon, we got to take a short break, and we're going to wrap up your interview after a very short break. Stay with us, and folks, you stay with us. We've got former CEO of DeKalb County, Vernon Jones, talking about the breaking scandal going on surrounding a lot of financial improprieties. Hope you're enjoying it, and we'll see you on the other side of the break. You're right here on 87.9 FM The Globe, and you're on Call to Reason. Well, we're back, and we're right here on Call to Reason with Loveless and Beth, and we've got Vernon Jones. We're going to wrap up our interview. Vernon, if you could give one piece of advice, if you were that sage, that trusted sage of our sitting interim CEO, what would you tell him to do right now?
Well, first of all, be very clear. Let the law enforcement agencies who designate to do their investigation, let them just do their job. I would say to the governing body also, do your job. When I say do your job, handle the business of the taxpayers of DeKalb County. Be as efficient, as effective as you can. If you know what you should be doing, what you should be doing taxpayers' dollars. If you have to question yourself what you're doing taxpayers' dollars, then more likely you shouldn't be doing it. But you cannot govern on being fearful of the media. You cannot govern based on some investigation going on. You cannot do that. Just do your job. Do the job that you were elected to do, and all this shall pass. And it is a distraction. You got to compartmentalize. I've had to do it. This is new for Lee May. He's new at this job. And a lot of times you have to become immune to that. But right now, clearly I would say it's a distraction. It's been a distraction. It's a feeding frenzy for the media right now. A lot of it is sensationalized. A lot of it legitimate. But if you just do your job, if you hadn't done anything wrong, live your life in the sunshine and do your job, you'll be just fine.
So you don't think that he should step down? You think he should just soldier on?
Well, it's not for me to tell him to step down. If he has done something illegally, he, like you or anybody else, deserves due process. If he feels as though he has broken the public trust, then that's something he needs to ask himself. But let me tell you, if you step down every time somebody tells you you need to step down, you'll never stand up and get anything accomplished. If he's broken the law, his day in court is going to take place. But just to do it because Mike Bowers said he should step down, based on, I didn't see a law that he said that he broke, but Mike is not a law enforcement agent. He's not a law enforcement officer. So he cannot arrest this man for anything. If he found something he thought was inappropriate and illegal, he's welcome to turn it over to any law enforcement agency he wants to, but it's left up to that law enforcement agency. What Lee needs to do is get on doing the people's business and making sure that he doesn't waste any more taxpayers' dollars and their time. There's too many important issues, budget issues, growing more revenue for the county. 2 elections get ready to come up with 2 new cities. That's going to have a profound impact on those of us who live in unincorporated DeKalb County because, again, that's more of a commercial tax digest being diluted. And you know, it kind of concerns me when I hear, well, we want to create our own city because of what's going on with corruption. Well, when there was no corruption, there were those who want to create their own city. It was about power. So let's call it what it is. So let's not throw dirt at the county. Many things the county has done a fine job, done an amazing job.
So what you just brought up is, you know, kind of like what the future is holding, the immediate future is holding. And so I thought that we could, unless Lovelace has another question, I thought that we could wrap this up with, you know, with what happened with Burl Ellis, what happened with you as CEO, and now we're going through what we're going through with Lee May. You know, one, how does that reputation that the county seems to be suffering, you know, we seem to be suffering with a reputation now for these CEOs, like consecutively kind of being in trouble. There was nothing found in any wrongdoing with during your tenure, but it just seems to be like once that was over, we have Burl Ellis, now we have Lee May. Do you have, what are your thoughts and what is your kind of maybe message for DeKalb County in terms of the future? What do you see in the midst of all of this?
And
what
also,
is the future?
And also, is there a target on the CEO's office in general now? In addition to Beth's question, is there a target on the CEO's office right now?
Let me say this. First of all, this whole thing started when I was elected to chief executive. The paradigm shifted. In some's mind, the power shifted. And the old mules that were in control didn't control what they used to control. Now, Burl's case, Burl never took a taxpayer dollar. Burl's conviction hinged upon what they said that he perjured himself in a civil grand jury, which he was told he was not the target. Now, the person who admitted to stealing money, the unindicted co-conspirator, was never jailed. Elaine Boyer is a county commissioner. She's not a chief executive. She's a county commissioner. She stole the most egregious form of stealing taxpayer dollars, and when you have taxpayer dollars taken out of their account and put in your own personal account. She's in jail for what she did. At this point, no other people have been indicted. County commissioners have been indicted. Not saying it won't, but it hadn't happened. So when you start talking about the CEO, it's never been about the form of government. It's about the face of government. Gwinnett County Chairman Charlie Bannister stepped down to keep from getting indicted. Two of the other commissioners, the lady, she went to jail. Her son went to jail. He was on the zoning board. They were doing an undercover thing. The FBI had an FBI informant that told them that they were drug dealers and told them they want to use drug money to buy land with the drug money, and they went along with it. They got indicted. They're in jail. Another commissioner got in trouble too on the land deal with the county. He was indicted. Later, it was reduced to misdemeanor. He had to pay a bunch of money. Why you don't see the same level of scrutiny and the assassination of Gwinnett County as you see in DeKalb County? More elected officials have been indicted and gone to jail in Gwinnett County in the past 2 years than DeKalb County in the past 25 years. Why has there been this over, with all the unincorporated land in Gwinnett County, why haven't they been incorporating cities there? Why isn't it Gwinnett County not seen as a county of corruption when there's been more there than there's been in DeKalb? So my point is, let's not leave it. The media has its favorites. Nobody can deny that the media doesn't have its favorites. Brookhaven is having more issues right now. Dunwood has had issues. If you investigate Dunwood and Brookhaven like you've done DeKalb County, I bet you can find a lot there. But the media picks and chooses who they want to camp out and who they want to go and infiltrate and get information. So I'm just saying, if it's about the form of government, if you look at where you have a county manager, since they want to go to a county manager, if you look at where you had county managers, Fulton County, the chairman and his chief of staff and a commissioner went to jail, they had a county manager. Gwinnett County has a county manager. But nobody is saying, well, wait a minute, do we need to get rid of the chairman because the chairman's going to jail in Fulton and Gwinnett County? No. Nobody wants to talk about that. So the issue is there's an underline here. There's a common denominator. There's a common factor. And I think we all know what that is. And that's the tragedy of what's happening in DeKalb County. That's the tragedy. And these other cities are being created. They have issues too. The ones who said they can do it for cheaper, well, now they're not. They're charging taxpayers more to be in cities than unincorporated DeKalb. So you want to create a city, but you turn right around and contract those services directly from the county? Well, why did you incorporate from the beginning? It's about power. It's about control. It's about the face of government, not the form of government.
Well, Vernon Jones, I think you've identified what Lovelace Johnson III would call a red pill opportunity for folks, and I think that this is something that we should explore further about how different counties are treated in the media when they are undergoing this kind of scrutiny.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more, Vernon. We here on Call to Reason, we have something called Team Red Pill. Just like the Matrix, if you want to get in touch with reality, you take the red pill, not the blue one. And what you just delivered was a solid red pill reality check about what's really going on around here. And we appreciate having you. We want to bring you back as this scandal unfolds, because as I've said in our introduction, there's no one in this metro area more qualified to talk about this issue than you. And so we appreciate having you here as our guest today.
Mr. Lovett, there is no one more qualified to talk about how to run an efficient government, how to run a watershed management department, how to run a transportation department, how to run a finance department, a parks department, how to get a dual AAA credit rating, how to pass 4 bond initiatives, including 3 in one night on 3 separate ballots. So, see, the tragedy is, when it comes to me, nobody wants to talk about my proven record and my accomplishments. It has to be about controversy. That's the that's that same. That goes back to taking the blue and the red pill you're talking about. When they want to talk about real issues, they don't call me. The media doesn't call me and put me. Let's talk about how you get a AAA bond rating. So they're going to do a regional sales tax, and it's going to require voter ballot. You passed 4 of them. Nobody else has done that in the state of Georgia in the history. But they don't call me to ask them how to deal with passing a ballot initiative for transportation or anything else. So that's the tragedy of it. That's the tragedy.
On the show to talk about this and lots of other issues facing DeKalb County. So thank you so much for being here with us today. We hope you'll come back on. Folks, it looks like we're getting ready to wind down. This went by so fast, and it was awesome to share some time with Vernon Jones, former CEO of DeKalb County. And
I want to formally, again, add my thank you, CEO Vernon Jones. Thank you for being here with us on Call to Reason today, and we're looking forward to speaking with you again.
Champs and chumps.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, that was CEO Vernon Jones, former CEO Vernon Jones of DeKalb County. We're about to get out of here. Make room for Hablemos Negocios on 87.9 FM. We've had a great day, Beth.
Yep, it's been awesome.
All right, well, we'll see you all tomorrow. And you are on 87.9 FM, and you are on Call to Reason.
1, 2, 3